Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep into one of the most, let's say, frustrating and fascinating dilemmas in torts law. Causation uncertainty.
Yeah.
Imagine you are the plaintiff. You are clearly injured, right? And you can point to two or more specific people who were demonstrably negligent, but you just have no way to prove which single one of them fired the shot, literally or figuratively, that caused your harm.
Yeah, the traditional rules would say you lose there.
Exactly. The traditional rules say you lose. But the law eventually decided that result was fundamentally unjust.
That's really the tension at the heart of our analysis today. And our mission for you listening is to understand the precise mechanism the courts invented to resolve this tension, this doctrine of the shifted burden of proof.
But
We are going to dissect the landmark case, Summers v. Tice, to give you like a diagnostic framework. We aren't just reading the opinion, we are modeling the step-by-step analytical process of how a court applies this pretty exceptional rule.
So let's start with that paradox then. If I am the injured party and I can prove that both party A and party B breached a duty of care to me, but I can't tell which one caused the injury, why can't I just sue them both? I mean, what allows the court to completely rewrite the standard rules of proof like that?
Well, the law shifts because if it didn't intervene, the negligence of two proven wrongdoers creates this evidentiary gap, right?
Right.
And that gap allows both of them to just walk free, leaving an innocent plaintiff totally without a remedy. And that's seen as a profound failure of justice when the harm clearly came from someone within that negligent group.
Okay, that makes sense from a fairness perspective.
Yeah.
So what is the resulting rule then? What is the general rule for the shifted burden of proof that came out of Summers v. Tice?
So the core rule holds that where you have negligence from two or more independent tortfeasors people acting wrongly,
Okay.
and it's certain that the negligence of one of them must have caused the plaintiff single injury, but the plaintiff just cannot establish which one. Well, then the evidentiary burden of proof shifts entirely.
It shifts from who to who.
It moves from the plaintiff having to prove causation to each defendant having to prove non-causation. Basically, they have to prove it wasn't them.
Wow.
And if they fail to bring in enough evidence to prove they did not cause the harm, they are held jointly and severally liable.
That is a really radical departure from the norm. I mean, it means the plaintiff has proven enough negligence to fundamentally change the whole game. So before the court triggers this nuclear option, as you might call it, what are the essential requirements? You said three things must be present.
Exactly. We can break the rule down into three non-negotiable prerequisites. These absolutely must be satisfied before that burden shifts.
Okay, number one.
First, negligence by all defendants. Every single involved defendant must have acted negligently toward the plaintiff, not just some of them, all of them.
All negligent. Second.
Second, injury to plaintiff. The plaintiff has to have suffered an actual specific injury, and it has to be proximately caused by the group's action overall.
Okay, real injury linked to the group. And the third.
Third, causation uncertainty. This is key. It has to be clear the injury resulted from the negligence of one of the defendants, but the plaintiff cannot, because of how the negligent acts happened, identify which specific person caused the harm.
Perfect. Now that we have the mechanism, let's test it against the facts that actually created it. Well, let's look at the specific circumstances of Summers v. Tice. Okay, so in Summers v. Tice, the plaintiff, Summers, was out hunting quail on open range with two defendants, Tice and Simonson.
Right.
The three of them were kind of in a triangular formation, and both Tice and Simonson knew Summers' exact location. He was uphill in the direction they were moving. Then a quail flew up between the two defendants. Both Tice and Simonson, who were about 75 yards from Summers, simultaneously shot at the bird, firing in the plaintiff's general direction.
Okay, simultaneous shots towards the plaintiff.
Yeah. And Summers was then struck by birdshot in the eye and upper lip, causing serious injury. Now, the trial court found both defendants negligent. But crucially, it stated it could not determine which specific gun fired the shots that actually caused the injury. So let's analyze Summers v. Tice using our framework. First, what are the legally dispositive facts? What are the key facts here?
Okay, the essential facts boil down to this. Three people hunting, two defendants, Tice and Simonson, acting independently but at the same time, shooting negligently towards a known third party, Summers.
Right.
Summers gets hit, injured by birdshot. And the court couldn't factually identify which gun the injurious pellet came from. That's the core.
And what was the core legal issue that the court had to resolve based on those facts?
The precise legal question was, could a judgment holding both negligent defendants jointly and severally liable actually stand, given that they weren't acting in concert, they weren't partners in crime, so to speak?
Plain conspiracy.
Exactly. And there just wasn't enough evidence for the plaintiff to prove which specific defendant's negligent act directly caused the injury. Could they both still be held liable?
Okay. So what rule of law did the court apply? Can you state the full black-letter rule again and break it down into its testable elements for us?
Sure. The court applied the rule of shifted burden of proof. This rule gets triggered when you have multiple negligent parties, and the plaintiff just can't prove causation against a single one of them.
Right.
So the law, out of fairness, shifts the burden of proving they didn't cause the harm onto the defendants. And as we said, the rule has those three distinct elements. First, negligence by all defendants. Second, an actual injury to the plaintiff. And third, that critical uncertainty about which negligent defendant caused it.
Thank you. Okay, now for the court's elemental analysis. Let's walk through this step by step, just like a court would. How did the court apply the first element, negligence by all defendants?
Okay, element 1, negligence. The court looked at the facts about how they were shooting. The application really focused on the evidence showing both defendants shot at the quail, either at the same time or immediately one after the other. And crucially, they shot toward the plaintiff while knowing his location uphill from them. The court found this specific conduct showed a lack of ordinary prudence, a clear breach of duty towards Summers. So, conclusion. Element 1, negligence, was met for both Tice and Simonson.
Understood. Both were negligent. Now, what about the second element? Actual injury and proximate result. Was there a real injury clearly linked to their actions?
Yeah, this one was pretty straightforward. The trial court's explicit finding was enough here. The court actually stated that as a direct and proximate result of the shots fired by defendants, and each of them, a birdshot pellet was caused to and did lodge in plaintiff's right eye and another in plaintiff's upper lip.
Ouch. Okay.
Right. So that established the concrete compensable injury and confirmed that the harm proximately flowed from the group's combined negligent actions. So, conclusion for element 2. Injury result was met.
Okay, that makes sense. Finally, let's address the critical third element, causation uncertainty. This is the real pivot point where the law decides to step in and shift the burden. How did the court apply the facts to this element?
Right. This is where the policy really kicks in. The court had to acknowledge the, biological certainty that the injury couldn't have come from both guns at the exact same instant, had to be from one or the other only.
Logically, yeah.
And since the plaintiff was not able to establish which of defendants caused his injury, the court realized that sticking to the traditional burden of proof would basically reward the wrongdoers just because they acted negligently together, which created this impossibility of proof for the plaintiff. The court saw that the two wrongdoers brought about a situation that put the injured party in a deeply unfair position, and the law simply refused to accept the outcome that, quote, if one can escape, the other may also, and plaintiff is remediless. That wasn't acceptable.
So element 3, the uncertainty created by the negligent parties requiring a burden shift, that was met too. Okay, after analyzing all three elements, what was the court's final conclusion?
The court affirmed the judgment against both Tice and Simonson. Because all three elements were met, the burden of proof shifted squarely onto the defendants.
To prove they didn't do it.
Exactly. And since neither Tice nor Simonson could bring in evidence sufficient to prove the shot definitely came from the other guy's gun, they failed to meet that shifted burden. So consequently, the negligence of both was treated as the legal cause of the injury, which results in joint and several liability.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, I think, moving from just the technical application to the why, the policy justification. The court really went out of its way to defend this massive shift, didn't it? Even citing old cases where courts apparently strained the definition of acting in concert just to avoid letting negligent defendants off the hook.
They absolutely did.
What analogy did the court use to justify shifting the burden based on sort of superior knowledge or access to evidence?
Yeah, they leaned heavily on the reasoning you often see in res ipsa loquitur cases, specifically citing Ybarra v. Spangard. Now, res ipsa usually allows an inference of negligence itself, but the principle they borrowed here is about evidentiary fairness.
How so?
The court argued that the, quote, chief evidence of the true cause is practically accessible to the defendant, but inaccessible to the injured person. Think about it. Tice and Simonson were right there, holding the guns, involved in the action.
Right, they were in the best position to know, or at least offer evidence,
Exactly. The innocent plaintiff, Summers, was just the target. The law decided that the parties with the superior access to potentially exculpatory evidence, evidence that could clear them, must bear the burden of producing it.
That's a really powerful connection. The law is basically penalizing the wrongdoers for their informational advantage over the innocent victim. Let's just clarify what jointly and severally liable actually means in this context, because it's super critical for the plaintiff.
Oh, absolutely vital. Joint and several liability means that the plaintiff, Summers in this case, can collect the entire amount of damages from either Tice or Simonson. He doesn't have to try and get half from one and half from the other.
So you can go after whichever one is easier to collect from.
Precisely. Get the full amount from one of them. Then it's up to the two defendants to later sue each other, usually through what's called a contribution or indemnity action, to, as the court put it, work out between themselves any apportionment of the damages. But the law makes sure the innocent plaintiff gets fully compensated first.
Okay, that's a huge protection for the plaintiff. Now let's cement this idea of joint liability, even without that definite proof of causation by one specific person, by using that unforgettable restatement hypothetical that the court cited. It really drives home how just participating in or encouraging negligent conduct can lead to liability.
Yeah, this illustration is great for memory. Imagine A and B are out hunting, okay? And both decide to negligently shoot across a public road. Super dangerous, clearly negligent.
Right.
Now, let's say A actually hits the animal they were aiming for, but B's bullet misses the animal and strikes C, an innocent traveler walking down the road. So in this scenario, we actually know that B's bullet factually caused C's injury.
Okay, so B is definitely liable, but what about A? A didn't hit C.
Right, this is the kicker. Even though we know B caused the injury, A is also liable to C.
Why? A's bullet didn't hit anyone.
A is liable because A knew B's conduct shooting across the road was a breach of duty, was negligent, and A gave, quote, substantial assistance or encouragement to that tortious result by also shooting negligently across the road at the same time.
Ah, so by participating in the dangerous activity alongside B, A encouraged it.
Exactly. It emphasizes that the law isn't just punishing the single act of causation in these scenarios, it's penalizing the group for engaging in a shared, foreseeable risk of harm together. The Summers v. Tice court used this to bolster the idea that when two wrongdoers act, well, if not quite in concert, then nearly in concert like Tice and Simonson did, the law holds them equally responsible for the resulting harm, even if you can't pinpoint the exact factual cause between them.
That really clarifies the policy. Okay, fantastic breakdown.
So we've covered the rule, the application in Summers, and the underlying policy. Now, let's maybe synthesize all this into an actionable, step-by-step diagnostic checklist you can use immediately for issue spotting in any tort scenario that involves multiple defendants and this kind of uncertain causation.
Perfect. Give us the 5-step framework for exam day or just analyzing these problems.
Okay, here is the analytical checklist you should run through. Step 1, check for multiple actors. First, just ask, are there at least 2 independent parties involved in the potentially negligent action?
Simple enough. Step 2.
Step 2, check for universal negligence. This is critical. Was each party proven to be independently negligent toward the plaintiff? Remember, if even one potential defendant was acting reasonably, this whole Summers v. Tice rule generally collapses. It needs all relevant parties to be negligent.
Got it. Negligence across the board. Step 3.
Step 3, check for the uncertainty fact pattern. Did the plaintiff suffer a single injury that must have resulted from the action of one of the negligent parties, but the plaintiff simply cannot introduce evidence to identify which specific one? This is your classic Summers v. Tice trigger fact pattern.
Okay, that's the core situation. Step 4.
Step 4, shift the burden. If all those first 3 steps are met multiple actors, all negligent, uncertainty as to which one caused the single injury, then the legal analysis must shift the burden of proof to the defendants. The plaintiff has effectively met their burden on causation just by proving the defendants were negligent and the harm came from their group.
So the plaintiff's job on causation is basically done at that point. What's step 5?
Step 5, determine liability. Now, the defendants are required to introduce evidence to prove they did not cause the harm. They have to prove their innocence, essentially. If they fail to do that, like Tice and Simonson failed, they are held jointly and severally liable.
That structure really makes a highly complex, potentially unfair problem much more manageable to analyze. So the deep dive today was fundamentally about how the law, when faced with a rigid rule that could lead to real injustice, creates a new rule, a rule of fairness. the shifted burden of proof, to make sure that wrongdoers, not the innocent plaintiffs, bear the evidentiary consequences of their combined negligence.
Precisely. And remember, Summers v. Tice really hinges on the crucial fact that the plaintiff could prove that both defendants were negligent.
Ah, right.
This raises a really important follow-up question for you, the listener, to maybe mull over. What happens if the plaintiff can only prove negligence against, say, one person in a group, and the rest of the equally likely actors were actually operating reasonably? When does the benefit of the doubt swing back to the defendants? That boundary between the clearly negligent group and the potentially non-negligent group, that's a fascinating area for further exploration.
Hmm. A great point to ponder. So what does this all mean? It means the law really hates a vacuum, especially when that vacuum ends up benefiting the wrongdoers. Go apply this elemental analytical method we've walked through to solve the next legal puzzle you encounter.